In this edition of Southern Newsweek, there's a temporary stay of execution of one of the largest southern employers. An exotic plant with a less than delicate bouquet turns heads in Dunedin. And a house in Makarora is creating a stir, despite being months away from completion. Kia ora, I'm Melissa Barton. There's a glimmer of hope for Tiwai Point as the aluminium smelter is set to continue operating following a new agreement being signed. The Southland community has expressed relief following an announcement from Rio Tinto, saying the smelter will keep operating for a few more years at least.
Workers at Tiwai Point and the wider Southland community have received some very good news. The aluminium smelter will likely stay operating for at least another 4 years.
People are very pleased, very happy. Nice to have that certainty. It's been a tough 2020 and the people inside have performed amazingly well through that challenge. And so it's nice to have a 4-year certain time frame now. We can get on with producing fantastic product and doing what we do best.
6 months ago, the smelter's owners Rio Tinto said they'd close the plant over this year, with a loss of more than 1,000 jobs. But this date has now been extended to the end of 2024, in part due to a new deal signed with the government-owned electricity supplier Meridian Energy. But General Manager Stu Hamilton says the cost of transmitting the electricity from the Lake Manapuri power station still needs to come down.
We still need to get a fair price for transmission to make sure that we are commercially viable over the next 4 years, and we'll continue to have those discussions with the New Zealand Government over the coming weeks and months.
Hamilton says his primary concern is with keeping the business economically viable over the next 4 years.
So my focus today and in the coming months is about how we position ourselves for success over those 4 years, and during that time we'll talk with all stakeholders around what comes next.
But you still have a small possibility to be open for after that?
There's lots of possibilities as part of the discussion, but we don't know what that looks like yet.
In addition to the 1,000 workers, the smelter is estimated to create another 1,500 other jobs in the wider community. In Invercargill, the South Today.
Dunedin's Botanic garden was humming recently as thousands braved the smell of the so-called corpse flower. The Sumatran Amorphophallus titanum flowered 2 years ago and has unpredictably bloomed, with its accompanying fragrance of a decomposing animal.
Hundreds of people got the chance to take in a rare sight, the blooming of an Indonesian corpse flower at the Dunedin Botanic Garden.
It's the Amorphophallus titanum. It's really exciting. It's happening for the second time in 3 years.
The flower is native to the Sumatran jungle, and Dunedin Botanic Garden Collection curator Stephen Bishop says it's notorious for its bad smell.
It's trying to attract pollinators, so it's really trying to mimic a dead animal because it's pollinated by a carrion beetle in its natural habitat in Sumatra. So it does a number of things. The spadix itself, which is the bit that sticks up the top, actually heats up to around body temperature. So we're about 30 degrees in here. The top of that will be about 37 degrees, or 38 degrees roughly body temperature. And obviously the smell as well too, and hence its common name, the corpse plant.
The Winter Garden glasshouse stayed open until 8 p.m. on Friday and opened early on Saturday to allow the public to take in the sight and smell. But it was online coverage rather than odour that brought some to witness the occasion.
I looked up the previous article that the paper in town here had written from the last time, and then I started looking at articles, and then I actually ended up phoning the DCC yesterday to find more of a timeline. They told me to watch the Facebook page, and I saw it an hour ago on my way to work, so it's perfect timing.
Corpse flowers are erratic in their flowering regime. This one bloomed back in 2018 and has caught the curator a bit by surprise.
I thought it was just going to put up another leaf, but when the bud poked out of the ground, it was reasonably obvious that, we were in for another flowering, which, is pretty special after 3 years.
Scientists took pollen samples for possible pollination of other corpse flowers elsewhere in the world. In Dunedin, the South Today.
People in Central Otago are being asked to consider raising a puppy for a year. The Mobility Assistance Dogs Trust needs puppies to be exposed to a wide range of experiences with humans before they go on to further training to help people with mobility issues.
Meet Baxter, a poodle who's been professionally trained to be helpful around the house.
Baxter, Toby. Toby, come on. That's it, get it. That's it. Bring it here. Bring it here. Good. Yeah, good. Nudge. Oh, good boy.
Grant Reid, who works as a coordinator and dog trainer for Mobility Assistance Dogs Trust, is looking for people who might like to raise a poodle or Labrador puppy for a year.
We need puppy raisers down in the Queenstown area to help raise little puppies for a year. So we've got some puppies coming down over the next 12 months, and we are looking for people that love dogs that might want to raise a puppy for us.
And it's all free, with the dog food and vet bills paid for by the Trust. After a year, the puppy goes on to further training and hopefully ends up working for someone with mobility issues.
For the first 2 weeks, it's very time consuming. Thereafter, it's a lot of fun because you can take the puppy everywhere.
In their first year, it's important for the puppies to become accustomed to the outside world as much as possible, with trips to supermarkets, shopping malls and workplaces.
For example, we have a teacher that takes it to school, and we have a university professor that takes us to her office and her lectures.
The dogs can end up assisting people with all sorts of disabilities. For instance, Baxter helps Grant's wife Judy, who has issues with her balance.
You're helping a person to enrich their lives by virtue of having a dog that not only helps them with certain tasks, but is a wonderful social connection to the rest of the community. So you're really doing a great service to helping the disabled community.
In Queenstown, the South today.
House building in the Queenstown Lakes district is fairly common these days, but they're usually quite traditionally designed. However, that's not the case for a 24-sided house being built in Makarora, which its designers say will end up looking like a big yurt.
No, it's not quite a circular house, but its designers insist it's a 24-sided house, otherwise known as an Icosa tetragon.
And we've designed the first two-storey yurt, which we're now building, and yeah, so we're 8 months into the build, around about, I think, or maybe not that long.
Builder Tim Ryan says their so far unique structure has been professionally designed and drafted. In times where building materials and space are at a premium, he says there are many advantages of a building like this.
We've got a 66 square metre footprint, and within that footprint we've been able to build a 132 square metre building, and it's 5.5 metre height limit here in Makarora, so we've been able to design this building into that height limit and have enough living for a family of 5.
He and partner Carmen Howell designed the 66 square metre building to accommodate them and their children. And Howell says the internally spacious dwelling sits on a classic Kiwi quarter-acre section, which they're growing their own fruit and veggies on.
And that's a throwback, to our heritage here in New Zealand, where everyone had a quarter-acre section. It was quite resilient, and we don't have that anymore. So people get locked into these tiny little sections. They're being forced to build a certain size house on a certain section, which I understand works for some people, but not for everyone. And we're just trying to bring back, some of that good old-fashioned Kiwi ingenuity and resilience, where we grow our own food and grow our own vegetables, and that's what I remember growing up. I've always grown up with that.
When completed, it'll feature underfloor heating, triple glazed windows, plenty of natural wood and a self-supporting roof. She says during the construction period, their unusually designed home has been turning heads.
We had a couple travelling around during the coronavirus, or just after the coronavirus, the lockdown, and they stopped here, had a chat with us, and ended up staying for 3 hours. So we made a connection through the house. It was great.
Tim Ryan says they're using about 30% less materials to build this than are used in a traditional square house. and the family expected to be living in their Icossatetragon by winter. In Makaroa, the South Today.
After the break on this edition of Southern Newsweek, we meet a pint-sized dinosaur ambassador with a vast knowledge of the ancient creatures. And the summer rodeo season has a loyal following from some, while is abhorrent to others. We talk to both sides after the break. Welcome back. Otago Museum's new dinosaur ambassador is giving the museum team a run for their money. Macklin Devlin is only 10 years old and is a font of dinosaur knowledge.
The Otago Museum's Dinosaur Revolution exhibition would not be complete without their own dino ambassador. Enter Macklin Devlin, part of the museum's Explorers Club, to tell people all they need to know about dinosaurs. Macklin's passion for the great reptiles comes through when you ask him about his favourite, the T-Rex.
Well, actually, it's not the biggest carnivore. There are 3 other species that are much bigger than it. But actually, it's got a bigger bite force, which makes it the king of the land lizards.
Macklin has done several radio interviews and a public talk for kids in his role at the museum.
The dinosaur ambassador is, I suppose, the public face for the museum, and maybe a little bit more relatable to kids, to have a child as the ambassador. Macklin's particularly enthusiastic about it. I mean, you saw maybe in some of the interviews, you can ask some questions and that's it, he's off.
Macklin has become one of the most knowledgeable about dinosaurs in the building.
From new science facts, that they've learned that T-Rex can swim, so it might actually just be able to hunt down and kill a sea creature like a plesiosaur or even a mosasaur.
Macklin's father says his son has been doing a lot of research into the creatures that became extinct 65 million years ago.
When he's got his own quiet spare time, he's off reading about dinosaurs. He's also around natural history. A lot of the books that we've bought him, he absolutely just eats them up.
Macklin says the job is a cool experience and enjoys his newfound fame. Next on the agenda for Macklin is to see the Dinosaurs of Antarctica 3D Planetarium show. In Dunedin, the South Today.
A struggle to find native plants prompted Otatara residents Chris and Brian Rance to create their own community nursery. Now locally sourced and grown, native plants from the Southland Community Nursery can be found throughout the region.
These little totara seedlings cultivated in the Southland Community Nursery could one day contribute to the restoration of Southland's forests, such as these mature totara trees growing at nearby Oreti Beach. The Charitable Trust Nursery also aims to educate visiting school pupils about a range of native plants in Southland.
They see what's here, they could get inspired and then go back to their place and start to plant or start to do something, put a bug hotel in or feed birds, so they might get inspired, or they might then go back to their place and say, oh, that's a cabbage tree. That, they now know and they can identify things at their place, whether it be their school or their home or their local park.
Located in Ototara, close to Invercargill Airport, some of the seedlings go towards restoring the small farm where it's located, turning it back into native forest, complete with a pond.
Yeah, well, we put the pond in because it increases biodiversity, and for school groups it's a really interesting thing because it brings in more birds and it brings in lots of water life, so lots of things that we do are pond studies. And children love things that are scrambling around in the water, and so it's a really good attraction for schools coming here. They can walk the tracks, they can do bush studies, they can look at native plants, they can look at insects, and they can look at pond life as well.
Relying on the help of volunteers, the Charitable Trust is intent on encouraging the spread of native species across Southland.
Primarily, it's about producing healthy, strong native plants from plants that already grow here. So we're trying to restore and promote the fabulous Southland plants.
The nursery also sells native plants to the public as part of its fundraising activities. In Otatara, the South Today.
Months of training paid off for a southern shearer as she toppled the solo woman's 9-hour world shearing record. 24-year-old Megan Whitehead's day began around sunrise and finished just before sunset as she took on the massive challenge.
Gore shearer Megan Whitehead putting her back into an attempt to beat the 9-hour women's solo shearing world record. A sizable crowd on hand to witness the attempt, cheering her on throughout the day. The 24-year-old had aimed to shear a sheep every 46 seconds, to set the record at 700 sheep shorn over a 9-hour period. In the end, Megan Whitehead bettered Emily Welch's 13-year solo women's record of 648 lambs after shearing 661 during 9 hours at Croydon Bush, near Gore. In Gore, the South Today.
Rodeos are a regular fixture in rural towns over the summer, but not all people are happy with the way animals are treated. The South Today talks with those both for and against the Wanaka Rodeo.
Youngsters and adults alike rode bulls at the annual Wanaka Rodeo in front of about 3,000 enthusiastic spectators. But not everyone was so happy about the event, with Queenstown Vegan Society Director Kate Gollop planning a protest at the main gates.
We actually see the whole rodeo as an issue. The use of the animals in there full stop to us is a problem. Of course, the most spoken thing is the calf roping. Generally, the New Zealand public have a real issue with that, and we completely understand why that would be seen as the worst element of it, because it is using essentially a baby animal who's not even properly formed yet and whose body can't take the pressure of a rope being flung around his neck and whipped backwards.
New Zealand Rodeo Cowboys Association President Lyle Cox says the events are a major fundraising opportunity for rural communities.
In some places like Lawrence, it's their biggest event of the year. The Lions clubs, Methven, they take a lot of money from the working the gate and working for the club, and they put that right back into the community. And you've got to question what people like the Vegan Society and some of the other anti-rodeo groups actually put into these small communities throughout the country. I'd suggest not very much.
The Wanaka Rodeo is now in its 58th year, with 72-year-old Pat McCarthy of Chateau Creek having competed in nearly all of them. He says the sport of rodeo has deep historical roots in rural New Zealand.
Rodeo is a heritage sport, and every event in rodeo goes back to who we were years ago and how this country was developed. And I'm very proud to be part of that heritage sport that we can look back on and thank our forefathers and all the rest for what they did and how they did it.
But Gollop says the way animals are treated in rodeos would be illegal in many other circumstances.
But if we look at the farming industries, if we were to witness footage of these things happening on a farm, those people would be absolutely held under the law for those actions. It's not normal behaviour to be using animals in entertainment in any purpose. And I think we have to look at the broader picture in that, rather than just saying, oh, well, these accidents happen in sports. These animals aren't willing contestants in a sport.
Rodeos are closely monitored by the Ministry for Primary Industries and the SPCA. In Wanaka, the South Today.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek. Southern mountain biking fans could soon have another event to compete at. And Wanaka-based cycle commuters are able to shave time off their regular trips thanks to a generous landlord. Catch this and more after the break. Thanks for staying with us. All going well, Queenstown could play host to a world-class biking festival next summer. Organisers say their aim is to grow the event into the largest of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere.
Next summer might see a 10-day bike festival being launched in Queenstown. And Red Bull professional freestyle rider Remy Morton has thrown his support behind the event, which aims to become the best bike festival in the Southern Hemisphere.
It's good to see like an event brought back like that can bring everyone together and all of spectators so easily accessible. It's going to be really good.
The 22-year-old from Australia rides both BMX and downhill mountain bikes and says he's based himself in Queenstown because of the quality of trails and jumps in the area.
I'm pretty good mates with all of the international pro riders. I would say that it's within the top 5 destinations in the world, and that's why I live here.
Morton says the fact that so many professional riders are already based in Queenstown will help the festival achieve its goal to become a world recognised event.
Definitely, like the facilities we have here are world class, and then the opportunities within are just insane because there's so many high profile not only athletes but people within the industry that live in town, so it's such a good place to bring in everyone and get involved with it all.
The festival will incorporate both races and social events, with dates set for February next year. In Queenstown, the South today.
Workers at a West Coast port were kept busy recently as more than 800 tonnes of rock were loaded onto a ship then sailed north. Port of Greymouth managers say they'd like to see more business at the once busy harbour.
The once bustling Port of Greymouth is still seeing some cargo vessels arrive now and then, including the almost 30-year-old Untitled, which has been busy loading 800 tonnes of greywacke rock to be shipped to Auckland for landscaping projects. But that's not something that happens on a regular basis.
Maybe twice a year at the most. I think last year we only took one load away, just the way things worked out of our other cargo, and when we did have spare time to come down here, the weather wasn't that good with the bar and stuff, floods in the river and whatnot, so yeah, this load here we were supposed to take away in October, and we've only just managed to get down here in January. So
Greymouth Port leader Franco Horridge would like to see other businesses also consider using the West Coast harbour for shipping.
I see any opportunity like this to prove that the Port of Greymouth is capable of doing cargo, and if there's a way of building the business, then not just for the port but more importantly for the town, it'd be fantastic.
Horridge says visiting boats will hopefully keep the port busy during the upcoming tuna fishing season.
If it's anything like last season, we had 60 plus out-of-town vessels use the port during the tuna season, which is a huge boost not only again to the port but to the town. If that happens again this season, which the indications are that it should be a good season, then that'll be great.
The Untitled made use of the outflowing Greymouth River current to turn around and head out to sea. In Greymouth, the South today.
Cyclists commuting from Hawea Flat to Wanaka can now cut 15 minutes off their travel time thanks to a new cycle track. The new route is a 1 kilometre shortcut through an easement across private land.
This new cycle trail just north of Wanaka is set to cut quarter of an hour off travel times for cyclists who want to commute between the township of Hawea Flat and Wanaka.
The main advantage is that it links Hawea Flat with the Hawea River track where we are here, and from the point of view of people wanting to commute by bike into Wanaka, it'll reduce their travel time by 15 minutes.
Called the Devon Link Track, the 1 kilometre shortcut runs through private land belonging to Devon Dairies Limited.
Part of the agreement with the landowner that it would be de-fenced both sides, and that was they very kindly granted us a 10 metre wide easement for the track.
This shortcut is ideal for keen cyclists who might want to spend a day cycling a loop between Wanaka and Lake Hawea.
I think it'll get a huge amount of use because all the people that like to do the Hawea track from Wanaka on their bikes can now do a loop. They can go across the Gladstone track, across Lake Hawea, come down the school track to Hawea Flat, and now back down Newcastle Road and across this link.
In Wanaka, the South today.
That wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For the latest news from the Southern region, head to odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 on YouTube and Facebook. Ka kite anō.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.